This is Lee Kwan Yew writing in a book entitled From Third World to First World, The Singapore Story, 1965 to 2000. Okay, it goes as follows. He says, after several years in government, I realized that the more talented people I had as ministers, administrators, and professionals, the more effective my policies were and better the results. Did you hear that? Lee Kwan Yew said that after he had done several years in government, the realization did not come on him day one. It didn't come upon him day two. It came upon him after several years in government. He says, after several years in government, I realized that the more talented people I had as ministers, administrators, and professionals, the more effective my policies were and the better the results. With the founder generation of leaders, honesty had become a habit. My colleagues will spurn any attempts to suborn them. They had put their lives in jeopardy to achieve power, not to enrich themselves, but to change society. However, he says, this group could not be replicated because it was not possible to recreate the conditions that made them different. This is very loaded. Let me try and explain it. So the way I understand it. Now, Lee Kwan Yew says that his generation, they just came in that, look, we want the British out. End of story. So it's almost like the earlier Kenyan generation we're talking about, Jomo Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, Kwame Nkrumah, William Ofori-Atta, J.B. Dankwa, people like Patrice Lumumba, the whole first generation third world survivors fighting to decolonize Africa and decolonize Asia. Lee Kwan Yew belongs to that generation. He was saying that in their generation, they were able to put their lives in jeopardy to achieve power. And it was not about enriching themselves, to change society. He said that this group of people cannot be replicated because it is not possible to recreate those conditions that created Kwame Nkrumah. That's very interesting. The conditions that created Nkrumah to come abroad and say that I just want independence for Ghana, that's it. It's not possible to recreate. Let's move on and see what he says. Very interesting. He says, our successors have become ministers as one of many career options and not the most attractive one. If we underpay men of quality as ministers, we cannot expect them to stay long in office earning a fraction of what they could have earned outside. With high economic growth and higher earnings in the private sector, ministers' salaries have to match their private counterparts in the private sector. Underpaid ministers and public officials have ruined many governments in Asia. Adequate remuneration is vital for high standards of probity in political leaders and high officials. This is Lee Kwan Yew writing. First world to third world. And we've been saying that all the time. So your Minister of Energy, he's called Napo these days. Before then, it was called somebody else. You pay him 12,000 cedis a month. You ask him to sign a contract for an oil company for 120 million. His signature will determine whether the oil company will make a profit of 60 million out of the 120. You pay him 12,000 a month. You don't connect his salary to the work that he's doing so that you can tell him that, Napo, if you're able to sign a lot of petroleum agreements so that we're exploring more oil and the exploration is successful and we think that you have done a good job, we will pay you 0.5% of whatever the company is getting. Until you do that with the energy minister, I'm telling you, you are a joker as a government. You are paying him 12,000 cedis a month. You give him a Land Cruiser. The lifestyle of a person who has a Land Cruiser doesn't earn 12,000 in the private sector. Those in the private sector who buy Land Cruisers, they don't earn 12,000. So you give him 12,000 a month. You give him a bungalow at Northridge, and then you give him a Land Cruiser. You are paying him 12,000. He's a member of parliament. He's signing a contract for ENI. These are the matters that as young people we need to discuss going forward. What do we do? And I'm bringing you the example of Lee Kwan Yew to see what he did. Otherwise, we'll keep having these conversations about people calling people Kronfor recklessly. It's reckless to just call somebody a Kronfor just like that. Not just a Kronfor, but you are calling his children foolish. What have they done? That their father is, so they are foolish. I mean, really? Okay, let's move on. And I like this point. He says, our successors have become ministers as one of the many career options. There are many career options for those people who are great and not the most attractive one. The government is not the most attractive one to them. If we underpay men of quality as ministers, we cannot expect them to stay long in office earning a fraction. Well, either they don't stay long in office or they might do something untoward in office. And he says that towards the end. He says, with high economic growth and higher earnings in private sector, ministers' salaries have to match their counterparts in the private sector. Underpaid ministers and public officials have ruined many governments in Asia. He calls it ruined, so I don't want to go into details what he means, but he says underpaid quality public officials have ruined governments in Asia. Let's see how he solved the problem. He said, in a debate on the budget in March 1985, I took the opposition to task for opposing ministerial pay increase. J.B. Jeratham of the Workers' Party had contrasted my monthly salary of 29,000 United States dollars with that of the Prime Minister of Malaysia, who was earning $10,000 but only took 9,000. I went further to compare the salaries of Philippines President Marcos at 100, the equivalent is $1,000 a month, and the President of Indonesia, the equivalent of it is also 2,500. So Lee Kwan Yew, in 1985, as Prime Minister of Singapore, based on this principle, was earning 29,000 United States dollars. Lee Kwan Yew became one of the greatest leaders globally. When he wrote his book, the foreword was written by Henry Kissinger. Kissinger decided to write the foreword. If you know who Henry Kissinger is and what he means to the global security, intelligence, and economic situation, then you understand how Lee Kwan Yew became important. But in 1985, Lee Kwan Yew was probably the highest paid prime minister in the world at $29,000 because he made the point that if you want to attract people to Singapore to work, and you have to pay them well so that we know that we are paying them well. So when they say stop your company, stop your business, it's a decision we have to take. $29,000 in 1985. A lot of people watching me were not born. 1985. He was earning almost $30,000 as Prime Minister of Singapore. Yet, Singapore, in the anti-corruption situation, was said to be the country that was least corrupt. But their Prime Minister was earning $30,000. These are the conversations we need to have as we build a new Ghana. What kind of Ghana do we want? What kind of people do we want? How do we compensate them? What KKD has said brings up all of these conversations. So let's finalize on what Lee Kwan Yew said. He said, however, they were all wealthier than I was. Now, so he was saying that those people who were earning less than him, Philippines and all those people were earning 1,000, he was earning 20,000. He said they were wealthier than he is. And I'm sure it's true. Okay. An Indonesian leader retained his official residence. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let me come down here. My practice was to have all benefits expressed in a lump sum and let the Prime Minister and the ministers themselves decide what they want to do. After independence, I had frozen ministerial salaries and kept public wages increase at a low level. All right, I'll jump here. When they had no serious unemployment by 1970, etc., let me move on. I increased ministers' salaries from 2,500 to 4,500 per month, but kept mine at 3,000. This was much earlier than 1985. Let me go on. In 1978, now this is an interesting story Lee Kwan Yew tells in his book. In 1978, Dr. Tony Tan was general manager of the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation, a big local bank on a salary scale that would have taken him to $950,000 per annum, almost $1 million. He said, I persuaded him to resign to become Minister of State, for which he was paid less than a third of his former salary. Apart from losing his specs, the most valuable of which was a car with a driver, Ong Teng Chong, the Minister for Communications, had also made a sacrifice by giving up a successful practice as an architect during the building room. When I was senior minister, I proposed to Parliament in 1994 that the government settle a formula so that revisions to salaries of ministers, judges, and top civil servants were automatic, linked with the income tax returns of the private sector. Do you get that? Lee Kwan Yew said, let us adjust salaries of ministers, judges, and top civil servants so that it is directly connected to the private sector. How will we know what the private sector has earned? The income tax they submit. So the private sector, that the income tax that private sector submit in banking, in law, and all that, tells the government that this is how much lawyers are earning. Let's pay our attorney general people the same, so that we can attract the best into government. It's a decision we have to take. And I'm submitting it. That's a decision we have to take. Okay, before the salary formula was implemented, top litigation lawyers were earning $1 to $2 million a year. while judges were paid less than 300,000. Without this change, we would never have been able to appoint some of our best practicing lawyers to the judiciary. We also had the salaries of doctors and professionals in government service linked to the incomes of their counterparts in the private sector. He said lawyers were earning $1 million a year. So I'll pay judges $300,000 a year. Should we pay judges the equivalent of what private sector lawyers are earning in Ghana so that we can attract private sector lawyers like Justice Kulendi, blessed be his name, then Adom-Otchere as well, to the Supreme Court? Should we do that? Are we going to call them Cronfor when that happens?